Hey guys, in this video I want to talk about the changes that are up on the PTR to spell batching. I'll have a link to the blue post below, but there are changes to spell batching on the PTR that reduce it from a 400 millisecond spell batch window to a 10 millisecond window for spell batching. If you don't know what spell batching is, it's basically the system in WoW Classic specifically where despite two people pressing abilities at slightly different times, like I might sap a mage, I might press the key, maybe 1/10 of a second after the mage presses Arcane Explosion. Despite me being a little bit slower to press sap, both of our abilities are going to go off at the same time, and the Arcane Explosion is not going to prevent me from getting a sap off. That is gone on the PTR except for the 10 millisecond window. So there's a lot of changes to Rogue. And I'm going to go through how it affects Rogue because I do think, especially in PvP, there is a massive change to Rogue. And in my opinion, it's a big nerf to Rogues. However, in PvE, there's also some changes as well. So I'll start there because the PvE changes are pretty quick. In raids and in dungeons and stuff, you're going to notice your swing timer being a lot easier to use, more responsive. So it's easier to follow a swing timer. Stuff like Hand of Justice, the trinket, is kind of like gotten a buff because it doesn't have to suffer from spell batching anymore. And the auto attacks it grants are going to come out faster. Stuff like Thistletea to me just felt smoother. Blade Flurry no longer has this big batching window in between the damage, so it comes out faster. And you can't do as many tricks with Blade Flurry where you would like try and move the damage to a mob that's kind of out of range. You are still going to be able to vanish abilities from bosses. It is just the window might be a little bit smaller and it might be a little bit more precise, but you still have invulnerability from Vanish that is still present despite batching changing. You just might be invulnerable from Vanish a little bit a shorter time period, but still definitely doable. And that's pretty much it for PvE. Not a whole lot of differences, but you might notice just things feeling a little bit smoother. When it comes to PvP, let's start first with just openers in general. Just opening up on a person is harder now with this change. A lot of times, I think you take for granted how often you get hit as you're opening in Classic, but a lot of times, especially if someone sees you, especially if you're like doing kind of a tricky play and you're running right at them and re-stealthing and hitting them, a lot of times you're getting hit back. And now this makes it a lot harder to get openers, especially against mages that are using Arcane Explosion. On screen right now, you can see that I'm trying to get a re-stealth against the warrior, but Demo Shout pulls me out and makes it really difficult to re-stealth and cheap shot kind of right in the thick of a fight, getting auto attacked and demo shouted out before the opener can go off. So that is something that you immediately notice. It's just harder to get an opener. You got to be more careful. You're going to have to come from behind more so they don't see you in stealth. And you're just going to have to make sure if you're like trying to jump a mage that they're not casting Arcane Explosion, because that is a huge thing I notice is way harder to open up on a mage now that is ready for you, because Arcane Explosion will catch you off guard and it will no longer spell batch with your opener. So that's a big deal. When it comes to Vanish itself, you can still vanish abilities that do not target you with relative consistency. So you can vanish if you think a mage is about to Kona Cold you, you can vanish it. If you think a mage is about to Ice Nova you, you can vanish it. If you think or if they're throwing a grenade at you, grenades are easy to vanish still. Not a big deal. The big change is going to be target abilities. I'll give an example with an Elemental Shaman. Let's say the Elemental Shaman presses an ability called Elemental Mastery, which gives him a guaranteed crit on his next cast, and starts casting Chain Lightning on you. On current Classic servers, I would wait to the last moment, I would vanish, and if I time it relatively well, the Chain Lightning will go off, but I'll vanish it, I won't take damage, and the Shaman loses the Elemental Mastery buff. And next time they cast, it won't crit guaranteed. However, on PTR, because the vanish timing has to be so tight, 10 milliseconds of batching, if I vanish at the wrong time, if I vanish too late, I'll get hit by the spell. And if I vanish too quick, I'll go away from vision And so the elemental shaman's cast just cancels. So that's what you're going to notice is all of these spells that require a target. This is going to be Death Coil, Scattershot, Blind. It's almost every spell in the game is going to be much more difficult to vanish. Stuff like Vanishing Intercept from a warrior. Because if you were too early, they just don't even get to press the ability. It won't go off. Doesn't matter that your Vanish has like half a second of immunity. If they can't see you, they can't even use the ability. And if you wait too long, you've already been hit by it. So vanishing things like instant abilities or targeted abilities is very difficult. Even just polymorph, a mage polymorphing right in front of you. Casting bar add-ons are going to be more important than ever. But even then, like even with a add-on that tells me exactly when the cast is supposed to end, I wasn't able to vanish polymorphs. Again, you have to be correct within 1/100th of a second. It is very precise. I was trying to dark rune polymorphs. I was trying to vanish polymorphs. I was not able to do it. So stuff like freezing traps on the ground, if you try and vanish a hunter freezing trap, it's going to be a lot more precise, more difficult to do that. These are all things that if it's tight timing, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Another thing to note is while you're going to notice that your gouge and your blind are not going to be able to spell batch as often, this also makes them better tools for interrupting spells. Same thing with kidney shot, kick. You're just going to notice it's easier to interrupt. You have more time to interrupt towards the end of a spell. So that is a added benefit as well. But Vanish is not the only thing that is changing. You also are going to see differences when you're trying to gouge things. If you're trying to gouge a blink from a mage, if you're trying to blind a specific ability that the opponent is going to use, any type of badging with that, you're going to notice that. You're going to notice your gouge and your blind, at least to me, it feels like they just come out a little bit faster. Even stuff like Vanish Cheap Shot just feels a lot quicker. You're able to act out of those abilities faster. So Vanish Cheap Shot does feel a lot smoother, and that is really nice. You're also going to notice that like just beyond stuff feeling smooth, the combat and movement is nice. So what I mean by that is I felt like I was able to run behind enemies and kidney shot them and not get dodges and parries. Whereas if I were to be, on a classic server, not on the PTR, if I run behind an enemy and kidney shot them, a lot of times the game still thinks I got parried, still thinks I got dodged. And I felt like it was easier for me to run behind the enemy and kidney shot them on PTR. So that was nice. But I think that's most of the main things I wanted to cover. It is going to be a big change. I do think it is a nerf to Rogue for sure. And it's not one that I'm super unhappy with. Personally, I am okay with the fact that this is happening because it changes things up. I felt 400 millisecond batching was too sluggish and was kind of just, it didn't feel great. The game is going to feel cleaner. The game is going to feel smoother. However, Rogue is going to be worse. It's going to be harder to pull off some of the fun things that you may be used to trying to pull off. So that's a shame. However, I do think while it is curious why they waited this long to do this, you're going to notice that the game just flows better. It feels nice, especially if you other classes. Again, Rogue got the worst of it, but other classes are going to feel smoother. Warriors using Execute feels amazing. It's going to feel like for some of those classes, like you've been robbed all of Classic, in that the game should have felt this way the entire time. And so while, I do think maybe they should have just lowered the batching to start with, at least for the remainder of Classic. Again, we don't know when the patch is even supposed to come to live servers. This is experimental. They're testing. They haven't said that they're planning to even release it yet. But this is my impression. This is what I think will happen if they do release this change and how it will affect rogues. So all in all, across the board, I do think pretty much every matchup gets worse, especially Warrior, because it's a lot harder to re-stealth, especially things like Mage and Hunter. But you know what? It does feel nice. It does feel nice. So that's my opinion. Let me know you guys' thoughts on this. Let me know if you guys noticed some things that feel a lot different on the PTR that I didn't mention. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.